So welcome to Salt Office Hours, episode 2. I'm Kavya. I'm the product manager of Salt Open Team. Joining with me today, we have Mo Anderson, who's our VP of Engineering, and Tom will try to join in remotely. And then we also have Salt core team members who will be answering questions from the community. We also have Rhett, who's our VP of Marketing. And a lot of exciting announcements from Sol coming up soon. So stay tuned and we'll get started. So today on the agenda, we'll be discussing working groups. We announced the list of captains as well as the participants of the working group on May 30th. So I'll be sharing the list again. We will also introduce the captains. The captains will introduce themselves and talk about on a high level, their plans for their respective working groups. And we're also excited that Mo is joining us today. He joined SaltStack from IBM pretty recently, so he'll introduce himself and then talk about his vision for Salt Open. This open office hours is pretty much dedicated to the questions from the community. So make sure you get you start sending your questions in the chat window of the Zoom room. Here's a list of all the working groups. We announced 6 working groups, and we have 6 captains leading the working groups. And we received an overwhelming number of applications for the participants, so we are extremely excited about that. So here's the list, and this video will be uploaded to YouTube, so any of you who wants to review it later can do so. The next aspect is we would let the captains introduce themselves. We'll go in the round robin fashion, and also they'll talk about the plans for their respective working groups on a high level. This is also really an opportunity for the community members to send in their feedback to the respective captains if they have certain items in mind. So do we have Daniel Wallace?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, let's get started with you, Daniel. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a former SALT core member. I don't work at SALT anymore, but I still am active in the community. I got my start while working on SALT using SALT Cloud, and I want to make it better. My plan for the first release after this creation of the SALT working group, SALT Cloud working group, is to really just standardize what all the cloud drivers look like. I want to document what is required in order to create a new cloud driver, and then make sure that all of them meet that standard. After that, as a long goal, the plan is to take SALT Cloud and move it out of the SALT code base so that it can be more modular, and use more of the SALT systems like SALT states and stuff like that, as opposed to having parts of it that are just wildly different than the rest of SALT. If you have opinions on that or you want to talk about it, we're in the cloud channel on the SALT community Slack, which you can find on the community, a link to join on the community page of saltstack.com.
So next up we have Megan. Megan, you want to quickly introduce yourself and talk about your plans for SSH?
Yeah. So I'm Megan Wilhite. I'm currently working at SaltStack. I got started on Salt initially as a DevOps engineer about 4 or 5 years ago, and then jumped over to Salt as soon as there was an opening I saw, and loving it ever since. So for the SSH working group, one of the main goals that I want to accomplish for the SODIA release is the Python 2 to Python 3 migration specific for Salt SSH. There's currently a salt enhancement proposal that if anybody wants to take a look at it, I would love to get any further comments. And that'll be one of the bigger projects that we'll be tackling for this release. Another thing I did is I went through and I looked at all of the issues that were tagged SSH issues and tried to prioritize some of those and see which ones we might want to tackle this release. I also plan to, in our first meeting, to kind of get everybody else's opinion of what they might want to tackle to make sure our goals are in line. And we also have a SSH channel on the community Slack, so if anybody wants to join. But that's it for me.
Thanks, Megan. So next up, we have the testing working group. For the testing working group, we are pretty excited to be partnering with SUSE. We have Mihai, who's the captain, and Pablo, who's the vice captain. Can Mihai and Pablo introduce themselves and talk about their plans for the testing working group?
Yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm Mihai. I'm working for SUSE and in the SUSE manager team, and Salt is an important component of this project, of this application that we are developing, and we are hoping to help improving the transparency of the Salt release process. And one of other goals of this squad or group is to improve the stability and performance of the test suite. So we are going to try to find ways to achieve that. Yeah, and Pablo is going to help me with the as a vice captain. So Pablo, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mihai. So, hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Pablo. I'm also part of the SUSE manager team, where we are working mostly on the Salt integration with SUSE manager, now the Uyuni project. And yeah, as Mihai was mentioning, our idea here is to improve the current test suite we have, trying to make it faster, more reliable. Yeah, you can find us in the testing channel on Slack. So yeah, just to mention, I have been working for Salt now, I think, for almost 3 years. Yeah, let's make it more salty even. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo and Mihai. Next up, we have Windows Captain Shane Lee. Shane, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. My name's Shane. I've been with Salt for about 4.5 years. I came from the military, retired 25 years in the military, and was doing a lot of Windows systems there, a lot of scripting, doing stuff by hand, and I didn't even know Salt existed. And man, when I found this thing, I thought it could have made my job so much easier over there. They hired me to be the Trigger Alert Windows platform engineer. So I've been working on Windows the last year or so. We've been trying to get all the test suite stable on Windows and really focused on stability on Windows. So you may have noticed there hasn't been a lot of feature development and stuff on the Windows side. So that's kind of what I hope to focus on with this working group is on the Salt side, we have some things that we need, but I'd also like to get some input from community on the direction they'd like to see us pursue with maybe with Active Directory, Microsoft SQL Server, IIS, and maybe other things that the community needs. So I'm excited to work with them and work with these guys and see what we can come up with.
Thanks, Shane. Next, we have the networking captain, Mircea Ulinic. Is Mircea online?
I didn't see Mircea join.
You can see. Okay, so we'll move on to the Mac working group captain. Wesley, do you want to take a few minutes to introduce yourself and talk about your plans?
Yeah, sure. I'm Wesley Whetstone. I work over at Square. I work on the Mac operations engineering team, where we use Salt to manage all the client devices, your laptop that you pick up and take around every day and randomly turn off in the middle of a Salt run. But yeah, so one of the main things that we have planned is adding support for Catalina, which came out yesterday, which has brought up a few issues that I noticed so far. But we'll try and get those patched out, and then also adding some states for very Mac specific things like profiles and preferences. So those work straight out of the box. And a little bit more support here and there for any issues that may be out there. But that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Wesley. And we are pretty excited that all of the captains have dedicated their time to contribute to SALT and also lead their respective working groups. They're really the subject matter experts in their respective domains, and we are extremely excited. So next up, we will have Mo, who's our VP of Engineering, introduce himself. And also send in your questions to the captains, to Mo, all of them, keep them coming in the chat window of the Zoom room.
Thank you very much, Kavya, and thank you to the captains who beforehand introduced themselves and the goals. Just a bit of background in here for the team on the call. As Kavya said, I just recently joined from IBM. I had spent close to 22 years working through the technology sector. And my introduction to the open world came very early on as I joined to work on a product known as MQ Series. At that early moment of time, MQ Series was technologically trying to solve the problem of working across multiple platforms and creating a networking connectivity layer that would essentially support the emergence of things like the internet and trusted protocols that would allow communications. And very early on, folks understood that trying to accomplish something like that could not be done through proprietary integrations vendor to vendor. And from it came the genesis of the strength and, if you like, push towards trying to work together in the open and collaborate across a whole variety of vendors. So Java became an early hobby for myself, and then later on part of my career. Through it, I understood a lot about what it really means to become part of an open community, not just the elements of the collaboration and the sense of community that you create and trust amongst folks as we depend on each other and we work towards, if you like, common goals and measurements, but also, frankly, how much you create dependency on each other. And so you may think, in a classic proprietary project, you're working very hard towards deadlines, and your managers are after ship releases and so on. But by far that was hardest when I worked in the community, because there are thousands of people out there who are using what you're contributing, who are watching over what you're doing, who are trusting the way that you can contribute. That particular early learning really shaped much of the rest of my software engineering career. I had an opportunity to be on and off through multiple communities, and just before joining Salt, and I should say Salt was part of my journey within IBM. I introduced it in there. We used it heavily in building up our cloud. It's one of the core foundations of how we stand up our environments. I shifted over to focus on the new emergence of containers. And with it, how do you make serverless computing work with containers? So I had the pleasure to be part of the founding members of communities like the CNCF, which was trying to bring a lot of collaboration between folks like Google, IBM, as well as Lyft and Red Hat and others. And then more recently and specifically, the OpenWhisk project. What's exciting for me to be part of the team is, frankly, what I would describe as the sheer sincere enthusiasm for the Salt project. My interactions with the open community have resulted in nothing but, as Shane put it, by God, I wish I knew about this. It would have, helped me. Or folks that frankly had joined our team recently, just through regular recruitment efforts, who said, we worked through Salt and we simply just love it. Its power, its extensibility, and so on and so forth. As we look forward, both Tom and I had spent quite a bit of time thinking through, what's next for Salt Open and for our core platform. And clearly the formation of the work group is an incredibly important first step towards that journey of further maturing, further expanding, and further spreading the Salt love to as many constituents that can benefit from it as possible. A working group is really an opportunity for us to strengthen the discipline and the responsibility towards each other. Because what our captains are going to be doing, working with the community members, they're going to start to focus more of the common goals, bring a sense of, what are the things that will have the most impact on most members of the community, and shift away from necessarily, individual, priorities or so on and so forth. What it will also do from a sense of community is that it will help us start to all understand what's coming, what's happening, in terms of the roadmap. And frankly, I think it's no shame to, talk about where you feel like there are some shortcomings. Ultimately, improve in terms of your ability to fulfill the requirements of the community, both on timeliness, but as well as the feature richness. So that's why I'm ever so grateful to have our colleagues from SUSE, as well as the alumni of our community and other members who have been using Salt in their own institutions to join in, because that's how we'll leverage the best practices. SUSE has been a great partner. I worked with them at IBM as well before, and if there's anything to be said, they really have really shined and were a great role model for quality as well as the aspects of release. So I'm really so grateful for all of our captains who have stepped up. Further beyond that, you will start to see us venture into new innovative spaces team. The open platform that we have, not only is it extensible in the sense that you can build it around networking, you can build it around different operating systems, you can build it around, frankly, variations of devices, cloud or IoT. It also has a lot of built-in data and knowledge that, if correlated, if analyzed, if integrated, can actually be a source of powerful insights for end users of that particular engine. And so you'll soon hear from Tom, for example, introducing a new segment into our code base, under the code name of Umbra. That's not the official code name, but within that, you're going to start to see us introduce elements of AI. We're going to start to look at how do we do a little bit more real-time, event management, and so on and so forth. So very exciting chapter ahead for us, and I'm ever so grateful to be part of this team. As always, this is a community. So both on behalf of Tom, I know he's not able to join today, and myself, we thank everybody. We thank all the captains, as I said, who stepped up. We thank the participants. And above all, the measure of our success collectively is going to be how many of all of us can contribute and participate. Now, one other element that I would like to bring up is a community is always strengthened through its interactions. Tools like Slack and others are always a great opportunity, for us to day-to-day, engage and connect and solve problems together. But we're also very pleased to share that we are going to also bring forward SaltConf, which has been in the past, sort of the meeting point, the amalgamation point for all of our efforts in the year. And this year, we're going to be bringing the community together again to actually continue to drive forward on our agendas. You will hear very shortly from Brett around the structure of how we want that event to be placed, and we're going to be putting much more emphasis on making it a community-oriented event. That means, the structure of the work groups, the collaborations, being able to go more into the deep tech and so on, and tackle maybe some of our next release requirements are going to become, paramounts of that. So without further delay, again, thank you, team. And Brett, do you want to give the team a little bit more insights on SaltConf 19?
I will, yeah. Thanks, Mo. So, yeah, I'm excited about this. So many of you know that SaltConf has been an institution here at SaltStack for 5 years running now. And so SaltConf 19 will be the 6th annual SaltConf user conference that we hold. I know many of you have been waiting for details on that, and We've had some things to work out here to kind of decide, what is SaltConf going to be going forward. And so everything that we've just heard from all the working group captains to the comments from Mo are music to my ears, because it gives us the ability to really make SaltConf a powerful venue for the SALT community. Over the years, SaltConf has been almost a free-for-all of sorts, right? As the SALT community has grown and it's just been extremely vibrant and it's gone in all kinds of different directions, this is kind of the evolution of really any kind of open source project, and it hasn't been any different for the SALT open source project. The conference has kind of been the same. It's been just almost like a crazy meeting of just all the things with, we've had 80 breakout sessions at this conference in the past. And so this year we've kind of taken a step back and we've kind of aligned with the work that you've seen, Kavya and Mo and Tom and all of you who I've had the great pleasure of interacting with a lot of you over the years. Really kind of focus in on, what are the areas, what are these working groups that matter to the SALT community? Where do we get the most power out of the SALT automation platform? And so what we're doing is building an agenda with SaltConf to really kind of help amplify those efforts that are starting here with these focused working groups, and really give, like Mo said, an opportunity for us to engage in person. And so I'm happy to announce that we will be returning to Salt Lake City for SaltConf 19. We'll be back at the Salt Palace, and so if you've attended the last 2 years, you're familiar with the Salt Palace and downtown Salt Lake City. And the dates this year will be November 18th and 19th. That's a Monday and a Tuesday. And so those are the details that we'll share right now. We'll be coming out with additional details in terms of the agenda, how to register, and much more in the coming weeks. And so we wanted to put that on your calendars. It's a save the date announcement for SaltConf 19. And we'll be in communication with you, the members of the working groups and the working group captains specifically, about obviously general details about the conference, but also more specific details about how we want to get you involved with SaltConf 19 and help us drive the activity and the content and all the work that we look forward to doing with you in person in Salt Lake City in November. So again, November 18th and 19th, Monday and Tuesday, back at the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, SaltConf 19, Salt Stack User Conference. I'm trying to figure out how many times I can say salt in the same in the same sentence. But so yeah, happy to make that announcement. So thanks Mo for giving me a second there.
No, thank you very much, Fred. So mark your calendars, team. It's going to be exciting. There'll be a lot going on, and as Red said, very shortly we'll get the details out. We're working through a lot of funky ideas, and our work group leaders and others are submitting in, of course, some of the structure elements around what we're going to do. But do expect it to be a moment of learning. Expect it to be a moment of similar breakout sessions where we'll talk about some of the futures. But as I said, the most important element of where we've seen the open community-oriented event succeed is our ability to actually break out and work through some of the requirements and the deliverables that the groups are focused on. Thank you very much, Kavya.
Thanks, Mo and Red. So now we'll move on to the question and answer session. So send in your questions and the core team will answer them. Do we have any questions yet?
No.
Okay.
Not that I see. Do you see any, Red? No.
Okay. We'll give it a couple of minutes for the questions to come in. So in the meanwhile, I'd want to re-emphasize that the working groups proceedings are really transparent, so which means that the meetings can be joined by the non-participants of the working group as well, and these meetings will also be uploaded to the YouTube, and the roadmap of the working groups as well as the work being done, all of that will be shared with the community. So this really helps the community to also be aware of what's being done in and being contributed by each of the working groups, as well as be excited and expect a lot of great things coming from each of the working groups as well. So we'll give it a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions from the community members for either the captains, to Mo, Rhett, or any of the SALT core open team members.
We do have one question. And this came in from Swami. It says, hi team, this is Swami. Being a Python developer, DevOps, AWS Solution Architect certified, and Salt Stack certified engineer, how can I contribute to Salt Stack community?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sounds good.
Sounds like somebody for Daniel's team, right? The Salt Cloud team?
Yeah. Okay. Daniel, do you want to take that question?
I think he might have dropped off. I saw him.
Okay.
Yeah. So Swami, the first thing is two options that you have. The first is, of course, everybody is able to actually engage with the community at large to either, of course, put in the requests that they have around certain areas that they would like to pursue. However, given the timing of your question and the launch of these work groups, we have a couple of opportunities that really would very much probably benefit from your experience. Being an AWS solution architect, you'll find that the cloud working group, Salt Cloud one, is one that we've really received much enthusiasm for, both from the community members, the rest of the world around extending the capabilities and allowing Salt to support much more of the functions of any of the cloud environments, not just the base system environments, but extended out to the additional resources. So if you've been able to actually look at that particular work group, I think that's one particular space that would be of value for us. The second one, of course, is based on your description around the just general community. One of the other areas that we think have the broadest impact is the area around testing. So one of the things we've observed when we look back at our release cycles, at how we are trying to integrate a lot of the pull requests and so on, is that we have an opportunity to frankly push for a bigger upgrade around our whole test infrastructure. This is something that Pedro from the core team has been working through, but we believe that if we can start to institute more of the basics, the fundamentals of testing from unit to functional to integration, and then try and automate as much of that around a very specific cadence and certain guidelines, that would be something that would frankly have the broadest set of impact on the community. So please, pick your choice. If you'd like, feel free to reach out to any of the work group captains to get, to learn a little bit more about their requirements. And we can't wait for you to join in and contribute. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mo. The next question we have from Alberto is, can you refresh how the team is expected to work? The captain will set the goals and the members will help on those and other goals, and only the captain can merge the PR. Are there any other relevant details about the process? I'd be happy to kind of walk through the high-level details of how a working group will function. Though we kicked off the working group with the captains talking about their the goals, really it's not just the captains who set the goals for the team, though they lead the discussions. We do invite inputs from even the community members, even the participants. So it's 100% collaborative effort, wherein the captain will lead this discussion, but each of the working groups will come up with their own roadmap for the respective working groups. So the other aspect to keep in mind is the timelines of the working groups. The working groups will be kicked off from June 15th. These meetings will be initially set up by SALT, and depending on how the individual working groups wants it, we would be happy to offload it. But the working groups will meet on a monthly basis. Each of the team members, and post the discussion, each of the team members will have an action item assigned to them by the captains and through the discussions. They'll work through that and meet and collaborate again in the next monthly working group meetings. And this is how the working groups will progress towards the individual goals that they have set up for the team. And the working groups will continue to convene till the feature freeze of sodium. That's wherein the major work of the working groups will come in, and till the sodium is actually released, they'll be in the sidelines making sure that all the work that they've contributed will actually reach in a manner that is useful for the SALT open community members. And one of the other questions was, what are the rights for the captains as well as participants? As Alberto rightly put it, captains will have the merge rights. And at this point, we are being cognizant about who gets the merge rights, only because we'd want to maintain the SALT stability, and we are making sure that because the captains are necessary, who we have for the working groups are the subject matter experts. We are making sure that they have the merge rights. And only on an extremely need basis, we would allow the merge rights for the participants, but that is when the captains request it and have a discussion with the SALT open team members. But the SALT, the working group participants will also have will have the general review rights, which are very similar to what any open community member would have. Were there any other questions, Alberto, in terms of the working group, or have I covered pretty much the top details?
Kavya, if I may add,
sure.
There's an element that is a little bit less around the mechanics of this that I think is important to call out. The captains are, as Kavya said very well, they're really leading the group and helping, shepherd them through this particular, journey around a release cycle. And so part of the hard calls that the captain has to work with the team is to figure out, what can fit, what cannot fit, how do we not overstretch ourselves, and how do we make sure that when we've committed, to the group to expect something that, we deliver on that particular commitment. I think the other aspect of the captain is to really nurture the next captain. The captaincy is not something that is, inherited. If you share the same last name as Shane, or Megan, it's not going to qualify you automatically for, to be the captain. But of course, to nurture the next set of leaders is an important aspect. And then for the participants, one of the things that we have observed, as a best practice across many communities is there are folks who have essentially committed themselves to a work group, and then there are folks who are in the open, listening in and participating. So at some point some point in time, you may have not committed yourself to a work group, but you realize that you're enthusiastic, or you're able, to give many contributions and so on and so forth. So inducting, the next participant and enabling them to be very productive in the sense of any of the delegation rights, etc., becomes an important aspect of how we manage this particular process. So just work through that team, and you'll find that each work group will have a slight little, variations that suits them and suits the cycle that they're working through. We do have a couple more questions.
Yeah, a few more questions have come in. One about a potential SALTConf in Europe, though, that I'll quickly address, and then I need to step out. But so Simon, to your question, we have very seriously considered options for bringing essentially the SALTConf franchise to Europe and to our community and customers there. I don't have anything that I can announce today, but just know that we are looking at a couple different options to essentially bring like a mini-me version of SALTConf, like a reduced version of SALTConf to Europe, including things like maybe getting Tom out there for a meetup group in a few cities within the continent there, and we've got some other ideas as well. So I'll just leave it at that. But we're looking at options, and we do really want to provide that level of engagement there in Europe as well. So
stay tuned. It shall be coming soon. All right, the next one was from Max. It says, thank you, Rhett. Once the test infrastructure is stabilized, are there any plans for more frequent bug fix releases? So this perhaps will go a little bit more around the vision that we have, team. The simple answer is yes. The challenge that we have, of course, as a group is how do we continue to improve to the point where we're able to be much more in this continuous release sort of cycle. The trend, of course, team, wherever you look, open or otherwise, is for us to try and get more releases out, which are much smaller, so therefore much digestible and consumable, such that people can make choices around when and where they adopt based on the feature set that they've really wanted to inherit, either as a bug fix or frankly a new feature enhancement that came in. So yes, Max, that is our goal, and we're going to march steadily towards that release after release after release. I don't think we're yet in a point in time to frankly commit and say yes, we're going to go to 2 or 3 or 4. I think we're going to judge this post our current activities to understand where it is that we can improve. I will share that in addition to our working group that our colleagues at SUSE are leading, we've recently increased members of our SRE team, and of course we've actually added a number of engineers to the SALT Open team. We have Joe and Tyler and Chad and Bryce and various other members who are really coming in, and their experiences around that agile and speed of release are going to play a great role in terms of just giving us a little bit more strength and capacity to try and tackle it. The next question came in. Is there any easy way to test changes against your CI gate without actually making a PR? So who wants to tackle this one? Is there an easy way? Is it always subjective? Oops, there you go. That was the answer.
Good, he's the one to answer it. But
yeah, go for it, please.
Pedro.
Pedro, do you want to?
Sure. So the short answer is no. So we have talked about stabilizing the SALT test suite. We also have plans to switch to PyTest for the develop branch. We also made recent changes to use Nox. Nox is a tool similar to Tox. I'm sure most of you know about Tox. So Nox, it's a tool that does the same thing, but its configuration is not a text file, it's Python, so it gives us more leverage to do what we need. And that was introduced to simplify the process. And this is to say that we are walking towards that direction, but we are still not there yet. So to run the test suite like we do for pull requests in our Jenkins instance, you will have to have an AWS account. There are some configuration files on the SALT repo that need to be laid out. You can use Kitchen Salt to spin up a few VMs, and I can go on with a few more steps and to elucidate that it's not that simple. But we have plans to try and make this more addressable, and in particular more feasible and easier for newcomers and even people who have been contributing to SALT for a while, but to run the test suite on their own, on their machine. But we are still not there yet. So I can also say some of the recent changes that we did regarding the stabilizing the test suite, which go in line with the question. We started creating what we are calling golden images. Those are system images which are locked in a specific time. They get updated from time to time, but in particular for pull requests, they are locked in time. meaning that we will always get the same machine running the pull requests. And a few months back, we would run a full state tree against a new VM and run the test suite against that. Today, we use that golden image, which only has binary dependencies. So if we need MySQL, for example, installed, it has that, but it does not install any Python dependencies. And what that allows us is to start testing Salt using virtual environments and Nox, similar to Tox. So it makes it easier to test. But to answer the question, no, not yet.
Thank you, Pedro. And I think as well, Pablo and the team who are looking at our testing work group, Mihai and so on. I'm sure this is something to take into consideration as we look at the work group alongside with what Pedro said. So thank you for the question.
Okay. Thanks, Pedro. And Swaminathan thanks us for answering his question. And he goes on to add, I'm a pro user of Salt Cloud with OpenStack, VMware, and AWS Cloud Profiles. Implemented solutions for provisioning, deprovisioning, start, stop, etc. Widely used in my company, First Data, and inspired is reactors and beacons. Good job, guys. Thanks. I mean, the appreciation is, I think, goes to the community, and this is certainly something that we do hope helps the community as well. So he has a question. Can I contribute as Python developer or for the testing or suggest feature? And this is something we definitely want to emphasize, that the working groups really are open to not just captains and participants, but again, the proceedings of the working groups will be made public. So anyone can join, understand what's going on within each of the working groups. So Swaminathan, you're more than welcome to join the testing working groups meetings and do contribute based on a need basis. And also one of the ways in which you can submit the features is through GitHub feature requests. That might be the quick way to get our attention. And you can also, if that's something which it's a specific feature and it aligns well with one of the 6 working groups that we have, now we would be making public the captains and the participants as well, so you can directly get in touch with the captains of the working groups in order to bring in, submit your request, which is specific to that working group.
We don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Any comments from the team?
So we'll maybe give it a minute, and then if there are no questions from the community, we'll wrap up.
Bueller.
Oh, yeah.
Bueller. Bueller.
Go ahead.
Well, team, on behalf of Kavya, Tom the Ghost, and the rest of all of you, thank you very much, both for the opportunity for us to share with you the news, but more importantly, of course, the thanks go to our work group captains, who took a time today to just share at a high level, some of the goals, and all the participants who joined. So Daniel, Megan, Mihai, Pablo, Shane, Mircea, who I'm sure we'll hear from soon as well as Wes. Thank you so much, team. Through your leadership and the contributions of the team, this is just going to be another exciting cycle and release for us. Thank you, and have a great day and evening, team.
Thank you.